Welcome back, everybody. Hey, I am Dr. Leo here once again with our awesome guest, Julian. Thank you for coming out here. And now we have our resident elves expert on the mod team, McDiff. How you doing, homie?
I'm doing pretty well. Sitting here as appropriate underneath Julian. I'm gonna take that elves expert not lightly. Um,
Oh,
it's awesome to have you here, Julian. Thanks so much for coming out. Um,
Thanks for inviting
it's
me.
yeah, it's a pleasure to have you.
so
And thanks for
we
commentating.
So we had some of our, champions. So one of the privilege you get for winning on the Discord is not only our awesome token that we have, but you also get a role in the Discord as Legacy Champion. And you get some special perks for that, as well as being able to submit questions for our awesome guest here. So we're gonna get to a couple of those here, and we're gonna start off. So Julian, what do you play in paper? We all know that you are the elves master, but what else you got? What else do you love to play?
So in Legacy itself, I usually say I've pretty much played any and every deck there is, except for goblins, ironically. But right now, the deck that I've built in paper, that's actually sitting right in front of me here. You, by the way, everybody come to Kenya. Kenya is amazing. If you wanna buy a safari, this is your guy. No, what I play in paper is actually, I guess it's super easy to tell if I show you, like for example, these cards. This is what I really like in paper. This is well, I guess this one isn't
Yes.
really isn't really seeing too much play these days. I gotta update it. But Green White Maverick, that's the deck that took me to my first GP day two, and that's forever gonna be a special thing for me because it was only my second GP. And I had like no expectations, and then I went in there and I played it and played and played it and it just worked out. And I really, really, really like it just to play a good mid-range game, and that's what I'm all about. Like I play all the other archetypes if I have to, and if like the metagame calls for it. But I always say Legacy is healthy when you can cast Knight of the Reliquary and not feel embarrassed about it, and that's where I wanna be. Noble Hierarch is my favorite card of all times, and the more often I can cast Noble Hierarch on the first turn, the happier man I am.
Yeah, and I agree. I love mid range Magic, especially mid range Legacy. I am a Green Sun Zenith player to heart. I love playing Green Sun Zenith. Maverick is a very close. I would say a third for me for like decks that I love, and especially a top deck where I love to just watch play because there's just so many answers in that toolbox. It's ridiculous, and it's so much fun to watch. We do have a resident a Maverick expert in Rax Volpine. They have won a couple of different Maverick. They've won one of our legacy events as well as played in our season finale. So Rax, you're not alone in the Maverick love.
Yeah,
Um,
it's one of the few decks that actually has an entire website dedicated to it. I think is it greensunsunnit.com that
yeah,
my
the
friend Dux at Twitch runs.
greensunzenith.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doogs also popular legacy streamer, but also loves watching our stream and hops in every once in a while. But Australia time zone can be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, and he loves making fun of me for my fear of snakes. Just earlier today, I sent him a picture of a snake crawling out of a garbage bin at a petrol station. And I was like, dude, how do you live there? And he was just like, he makes fun of me for it all the time. Like, dude, seriously. There's no, I guess there are snakes in Germany, but none of them are like, I've never seen one. Let's put it that way.
Australia is a cut from a different cloth. I've met back when I was in the military. I actually knew several different Australian soldiers, and the things they are just cut from a different cloth. They're just tough as nails, and when you live in a place where everything wants to kill you, it creates some different people. But yeah, it's so much fun to watch Green Sun Zenith go off, and sadly, Opposition Agent. I really don't want to ever see that card again.
Tell
Ugh.
me about it.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, I feel bad now because dirty, filthy pox player over here.
I forgot that's your backup deck. Yeah,
I play Doomsday too, so dirty, filthy combo player as well. But
Dude, a friend of mine, Max Gamer from minmaxblog.com, he actually earlier today won a game because of a position agent against Doomsday. He was ready to like play Doomsday and then pass the turn and then eventually win. But because the opponent flashed in a position agent, that meant he just like milled himself, right? He just like lost
mhm.
his entire library. But he had Oracle in hand and 2 mana ready. So he just took it down right there.
Oh, wow. That's
It's the way
I
to
think
do
that's
it,
the
right?
I think that's the 1% of cases when it comes to
Yeah.
opposition agent versus yeah, like but I think most of the time if your opponent flashes in opposition agent and it resolves against Doomsday, I think that's pretty much a game over.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
So
well, speaking of which, Julian, I know you've been involved in the Doomsday community now for a little while, playing it on stream a few times, and I know you're on the Discord, the Doomsday Discord. Uh, so I'm assuming it's a deck you enjoy playing. Uh,
Well, I'm as involved in the Doomsday community as somebody riding their bike is involved in riding the Tour de France or something. Like I've done the thing like riding the bike or playing the Doomsday, but I wouldn't say like I'm a Doomsday player. The deck plays me. I don't play the deck.
I actually watched the entire video that you put out of the Doomsday coaching, and honestly, from a non-Doomsday player, but knowing that Black Sky Doc is in the Discord, and if I'm going to play in any of our events, I have to face Doomsday at some point, it gave me a lot of pointers for learning how to play against Doomsday, because honestly, the deck is just so terrifying. And being the fact that I primarily play Nick Fit, it's like, well, I got to get my Cabal therapies right, otherwise I'm dead. So,
um,
yeah, Mike, go ahead, hit us up with another question.
I was just gonna say we had a question from Oliver V, who I believe played today, and has won a few uh, tournaments around here. He wants to know, what do you prefer, signed cards, alters, or foils? And it says no foil alter, signed foil art alters.
That's a cop out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously this is 100% the taste of taste. Guess you frame the question of taste and more like something. Anyway, for me, am I mad?
Yeah, I think your mic's breaking up there a little bit, Julian. Here. Let's try.
Do you have something out from the stream?
Hmm.
Can you hear me now? Test.
Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Better now. Better now. Better. Yeah.
Couch87, thank you for the follow. If we missed,
Julian, if you just want to check for us real quick.
Yeah, but I don't know what.
Oh, yeah. So that's a new and exciting development that we've all come to know and love in the time of the living online. Um, so it looks like Julian stepped out for a second from the chat to see if he can get his uh, mic working.
so let's riff a little bit about elves. Elves, because one of those. Oh, do we have Julian back? I think we might.
It looks like he's
Think,
here, but not.
think we're getting
Oh,
that. Sorry, chat. It's one of those things. Technology happens, and since we're communicating across the globe, so thank you for the subscription, and thank you. Oh,
Test.
kind of off to the side. I can't see it.
Test.
Something MTG. Thank you for the subscription and welcome
oh, it's
to the
Malfi.
Malfi. Thank you
Hey,
for the
Malfi.
subscription. Malfi's a homie. Malfi is as what I was talking about earlier with the Forsaken Monument player, because you will die to Malfi on 12 posts. Just letting you know.
I've done it. It has happened for me. You were saying, while we get this situation figured out, I have no problem riffing about elves. I got two different elves decks sitting right next to me on my desk right here.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I think we might. Got. Okay, I think that they got him on the stream. And now something and now is on the stack. Thank you for the follow. And okay, there we go. So okay, so it's OBS. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, so we're having Julian It's going to be fixing up here in just a second here. Sorry about this, folks.
Yeah.
Sometimes happens. So we're going to go to a short break. Like everybody, we'll get this fixed up.
Can I hear
Oh,
you? Can you hear me?
oh, never mind.
Oh, yeah.
Julian, we got you
Yeah, okay.
back.
Okay, I'm back. Somehow I had to close the ninja thing, and now I'm back.
It may have just.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
now
still
we
on the
got
same
you.
feed and everything.
Your video is. Yeah.
Video
Yeah, you're
still-
back.
Okay, now we're
Perfect.
good.
I'm back.
There we go.
Okay. Just
So you were
Okay.
telling us about your preference on signed cards or alters or foils or just the normal card, which
Yeah. To me, the number one thing is consistency. Like, even I gotta say, even if you want to play new frame when there's old frame available, at least be consistent. I want my deck to look like a deck of cards, like a Magic deck, and that's, to me, that means I appreciate old frame, original printing, except for Brainstorm. I don't know. It's just like I really like the Mercadia Mask Brainstorm over the Isis Brainstorm.
Understandable.
That's the only inconsistency, I would say. And for the rest, I'm not too big on altars, really. I don't like it when they break the frame of the card. Like, you probably could already tell, I'm really attached to the old frame. But I don't hate it, especially if they're done well and with taste. That's such a buzzword. Oh yeah, I like it when it's done with taste. It's like, oh no, sorry, this is without taste. Okay, whatever. So that's for me. Like, number one is consistency. I do like foils. I like it when it's all foil. I don't really like it when it's like a one random foil. But I guess I gotta make an exception because this card actually tells a story. Where's my Scavenging Ooze? I have one foil in the deck, which is usually frowned upon, but I love this one so much. There it is. Russian foil Scavenging Ooze, which was actually given to me by my friend from Russia, Sergey. Actually, it says from Russia with love, even. He told me it's a Russian legacy tradition that if you meet friends at a tournament, you have to give them a foil card. And he always gives me Russian foil cards.
I need to make a Russian friend. Do you have any Russian friends for me, Julian? I mean, I'll travel.
Russian friends.
But it's one of those things. I'm in agreement with you. I actually have a foil signed Scavenging Ooze that I play in my Nick Fit deck because I just love that card
See,
so
I have
much.
the foil promo M14 one.
Yeah, that's the one that I have, but I got it signed, and it's one of those things that I love signed cards. It's just unfortunate because of the fact that I'm forced to love signed cards because the tropical island I first bought is a signed tropical island. So, like you said, consistency, it's going to throw me off so much, and it's going to just irk me that little bit if I don't get some of my cards signed. But then some artists do have amazing signatures.
Yeah, I think it depends on which kind of deck you're playing, because especially if you're playing those Rob Alexander lands, there's a rumor that there's more signed Rob Alexander dual lands than there's non-signed Rob Alexander. That guy is literally going to sign anything that comes to his table.
That actually makes sense because Tropical Island was a Rob Alexander, if I remember correctly.
No, I think that's just by Maya Forest, but I could be wrong because they misattributed one of them. Probably, actually, I bet Tom in chat actually knows that. It's probably not just by Maya Forest, but they printed it on it. But who knows?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I pull up Tropical Island art and it gives me random Tropical Island scenes from Etsy. I forgot to put MTG onto there.
Yeah, apparently it's just by Maya Force. Oh yeah, he was there for my very first GP, and I didn't want to stand in line for 3 hours to get my Tropical Island signed.
Yeah, Jesper. Yeah. Well, I guess I got to get my Bayou signed now. I guess. So our next question is: do you have a favorite Paper Legacy moment? Great top deck, high finish, good deck choice. Like you were saying earlier, you did a very good position with Maverick. But any other favorite moments?
Honestly, my favorite moment, probably like in all of Magic that I've been part of, was when it's hard to say, but I hate to put it down like on one moment because there's been so many moments. But like when you asked the question, when you first sent it to me, the thing that came to mind was when my friends and I, we called ourselves Team Eurospec back in 2014. We traveled to the US East Coast. We had 2 guys from Denmark, 1 guy from the Czech Republic, 1 guy from Austria, and me from Germany. And then we picked up 2 random Germans we are actually friends with along the way that we met there. And we just traveled the US East Coast and we played in GP New Jersey. We played after the GP, we played in a F&M in New York. And afterwards, we traveled down to Richmond. We played in SCG Richmond, and those were some of the best times of my life. Those 2 weeks, they were absolutely amazing. Like first time in the States, first time experiencing like super international travel because previously I've only been around Europe. Anyway, long story short, on the very last night, my friend Mark Koenig, some know him by Bara. He used to stream quite a lot. He was actually one of the earliest streamers. He ended up taking down the entire event, and we were just like there with him. We were watching him, and he played one of the best games of Legacy ever against Joe Lossett in the finals, Beth in Texas against Legends Miracles back then. And to me, that was just like the icing on the cake. That was one of the best ways to end that entire tour, and it also helped us out because we needed money. We like maxed out all of our credit cards, and we needed to go back to New York City on the next day to fly home. And Mark and Tomasz, they got top 8, and I guess Mark won, and Philip and I, we got 11th and 10th place. And I think Niklas took down the modern event, and that gave us the cash that we needed to get on the Greyhound and get back to New York City. Otherwise, we would have needed to borrow like money from the local players that we knew, and
Oh
then
my
like pay them back via
god.
PayPal or something. So
Oh my god.
those 2 weeks, and especially those last couple of days, that was something else.
And that is true. It is one of those important things that is what paper magic was. It was traveling with GPs. It was visiting friends. It was, people coming together and just playing their favorite game, and especially with Legacy, because the communities are so tight. I mean, you talk about communities where people are like best mans at other people's weddings. Like that's the type of community that we're talking about here in Legacy, and it's one of those things you just can't replace that with the computer.
Yeah, it's something else. It's something I'm really, really looking forward to. I want to travel a lot more. I've been invited. That's actually, oh my god, that's something else. That's not like a moment, but that's something that really shows you how international and awesome the community is. Actually, yeah, that's one of the other moments. The Chinese Legacy community, especially one of their leaders, Haobo, he invited me twice to the biggest Legacy tournament in China, the All of Legacy in Beijing, like in 2018, 2019, and those were incredibly unique experiences. Like those guys really like they got me in a plane. They were like, "Hey, we want you to play in this tournament." And I got to know so many awesome people in China. And something I didn't know before my first trip is how much they actually consume our, I guess, the English content at least. And that they sometimes, they have entire podcasts translated. Not all of them, but sometimes, like for special ones, they do, or for very important articles, they do that as well. So there's like a couple of people who are like they're the wheels between the Western and the Eastern scene, and we really don't know too much about the Chinese Legacy scene. And my friend James Shu, who also runs Humans of Magic and Cardboard Live, he does a lot of work in trying to get those scenes closer. And yeah, getting to China and discovering the Chinese Legacy scene, that was something else. That was something I had no idea what I was in for, and I had such good times there both times.
Yeah, I've heard good things about the Chinese scene. Mostly listening to your reading Humans of Magic, and it's one of those things that I used to do a lot of work out of Thailand, specifically out of a lab out there. And I would travel through China, and that's one of the things I always kind of wish that I could do is just bring my legacy deck and just see. But I've never in China for long enough. I don't spend enough time there. But playing Magic, especially paper Magic internationally, that it just binds people together because even though you may not speak the language, everybody knows what the card does.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I felt about it. I went there. I was like, oh, will they understand what I'm gonna say? But I mean, of course, everybody speaks Magic. Everybody knows what attack, block, target is, even if you don't like speak Magic. Otherwise, that's what it says on the card.
Yeah.
Everybody
So
takes the card in the same hand and points with it at the card they're targeting.
yeah.
Yeah, the only people that scare me are the people that tap to the left. I mean, seriously, what's wrong with you?
Yes. Yes, I am right there with you. I don't understand it, but when people put their lands in front of their permanents as well, that's another thing. It just irks me.
Yeah, it's funny. That's actually how they used to teach it. Like in alpha, beta, like the early sets. That's how the booklet actually told you to play.
No
And then
way.
like
I
20
never knew
years
that.
later, they actually betrayed us. They were like, no, you actually have to play lands behind spells. And
Yeah.
like, but the booklet, like, yeah, fuck the booklet.
All right. So this is the big thing that everybody's been asking for. Big C, you've been asking for in the chat. Malfi, you've been asking for the chat. All right, let's talk about elves. How do you think it's doing? How do you think it's positioned right now within the meta, as well as Do you think going forward with elves, do you think it's going to maintain that position because of Allosaur Shepherd?
I think Allosaurus Shepherd has elevated it to a new level with regards to tactics. Like you, these days, especially in the first game against, say, Delva, when they are tapped out and you have Allosaurus Shepherd in hand, you know that you're gonna win no matter what. And that's really something we didn't really have before. We still had to go for like incremental advantages, not always fully committing to the board. And that has changed. It also changed our game plan against most control decks because, barely anyone uses Terminus anymore. That people try like Dead of Winter. That's probably like the mass removal spell of choice, and that's why Progenitus is so good. And now against Snoko, for example, we have this avenue where we like give them a little bit of discard, then get the Shepherd down to make sure it sticks and doesn't get removed, and then we immediately go into natural order for Progenitus. And there's not really much they can do about that. And I think that's a really great avenue for elves. I just wanna also be on record saying that I think Allosaurus Shepherd is the stupidest card I have ever played with in Legacy that has not been banned yet. I mean, I've played with Flash and all the kind of stupid stuff that we had in Legacy that was eventually banned. And I'm not saying like Allosaurus Shepherd's like the number one thing that should be banned. I think it's just like another one of those things that has taken Legacy to a level of degeneracy that I'm not too big of a fan of. But it's basically a thing. That's what it takes to be competitive with elves on a whole new level because the card is really busted. And yeah, I think Elves is pretty good. I used to say Elves is one of the top 5 decks in the format, but now that Ursa Stompy, the one with, High Breach and stuff, they've made their presence known. That's like the top 6 of Legacy, right? You got Rock Delver, you got Death and Texas, you got Snowco, you got Hogak, you got Elves, and now this one is coming up. And technically also Doomsday. Like the thing about Doomsday is I think it's one of the best, if not the best decks, the best deck in the format. It's just that not enough people are playing it to really count it somewhere. It's just like it doesn't have the numbers yet, but I think it's incredibly powerful. So there's like a top 6, parenthesis top 7, but I mean there's still 10 more decks, and if they won a tournament, you wouldn't really be too surprised about it, I guess.
That is what's so cool about Legacy. But go ahead, Mike. You had something.
I was just gonna, I spend a decent amount of time watching your streams. My elf deck is not a carbon copy of the deck that you've been running recently, but pretty close. Um, the introduction of Allosaurus Shepherd basically did two things in my eyes for the deck. It pushed out what was the other newest card for the deck in the Archon from Battle Bond, and pushed out the remainder of the mana dorks. The mana dorks for me, I still run a singular mana dork because I can't let that Llanowar elf go.
Yeah.
Have you felt the deck is at all slower since losing the mana dorks?
I wouldn't say it's that much slower, really. It does make a really big difference whether you get the turn 1 acceleration or not. It's such a big world of difference. That's why I feel like if you run out your turn 1 acceleration, that's the very best, obviously, the very best spot you could use removal spell on. And I think you don't lose out too much because you still have like your virtual rangers, which give you a bunch of acceleration, and your heritage druids. But you do lose some of those turn 1 acceleration moments for sure, because in my ideal world, I run 3 Llanowars, which is basically what I did. I had 2 Llanowars and 1 Findon Elves, because Elfish Mystic can die in a fire. So I want to have 3 of those, and right now I got 0. So there's definitely a decrease in acceleration, but it's not too noticeable, I feel, because something that's interesting is, what does acceleration do for you? Acceleration in many matchups actually allows you to do stuff that you're not really supposed to do in that turn, but by having Shepherd, that also means you get to play into Days, you get to play into Force of Wills on turns where you otherwise wouldn't do it because you'd rather like get a smaller incremental advantage. But knowing that your stuff is going to resolve also allows you to tap out more freely, especially against Days. And that somewhat compensates for the lack of acceleration. But yeah, overall the deck got slightly slower because of that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the deck has really started to lean more on the Dryad Arbors, because essentially a Dryad Arbor on turn one is acceleration when you have a Gaia's Cradle, as well as the fact that you can get a Green Sun's Youth on on zero for Dryad Arbor. So because of that, it leans more heavily on the Dryad Arbor as your mana dork, but it in that sense, it does open you up more for avenues such as like Wasteland and stuff like that. If
Oh,
I'm
I mean,
completely incorrect on that.
turn one Green Sun Zenith for Dryad Arbor is, the key example of why that card is so good,
Yeah,
right? I mean, because it's just as good on turn one as it is on turn five. Um, there is no downside unless there's a Grafdigger's Cage out to ever drawing Green Sun Zenith because it is the card that you need when you need it.
yeah. I really do think that with Dried Arbor or leaning more heavily on the Dried Arbor so you can power out your cradles and stuff like that. Let's be real here. Cradle is the most important land in that entire deck, and that's the reason why I had a little bit of a question. So I know you are primarily on the Alice Shepherd build. What is your opinion on the Elvish Reclaimer build of elves?
I think, especially before we got Allosaurus Shepherd, I keep calling it right. Before we got Allosaurus
Me
Shepherd,
too.
it might have actually been the best version of elves. I mean, Newton totally tore apart Legacy with it. Or not only like leagues or Magic, but Magic Online, but like Legacy in general. It had a ton of amazing finishes, but I think now that Shepherd is out, I'm very convinced that this is the way to go. Just the sheer power that Shepard has and the way that it has opened up matchups on a strategic and a tactical level that we didn't really have before. I really, really think that that's the way to go. And like one of the few things that people discuss these days is the sideboard. Like how much do you want to commit to getting stuff like ley lines and versus other forms of graveyard removal. But I think right now in Legacy and Elves, the discussion is no longer really a Reclaimer versus Shepherd because Shepherd is so dominant. So if anything, you might be looking to get a build that uses Reclaimers and Shepherds, but I think that's kind of hard while still maintaining what the deck's actually doing. Because the Reclaimer build already was like slowly going more into the Maverick direction.
Hmm.
And I think there's not enough room for it. I don't know how much Newton is like still working on that because he played in one of those Wizards tournaments he qualified for, and I think he almost got to the finals. Like they had some weird tournament system where he went like 4-2, but the player going 3-3 actually finished ahead of him. It was like, okay, whatever. But yeah, I think I'm very, very convinced that the current build of elves is the way to go with it.
Yeah. And one last thing about the current build of elves is I really think Allosaurus Shepherd with Gaia's Cradle really gives you just an alternative win con, just attacking with 5/5s. I think that's just like so good. It's just turning your, as you put it, eating all of the Allosaurus Shepherds to power up your elves and attack in. I think the card has given elves this such strong boost. I just wish that Jumpstart was actually properly allocated because I want a copy.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
hard to get in paper, right?
I
Yeah, it's
bought
no.
3 and it's 3 of the most difficult. It was harder to get those than it was to get cradles.
Wow. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me with how they did. But so we have another question here. This is from Cosmic Cooley, one of our legacy champion, our weekend champions, and he asks, "Have you ever lost to Death and Taxes while playing elves? And if so, how?"
Dude, often, way more often than I can remember. And I think, let me preface this by saying if somebody ever tells you, I have never lost this matchup, you see somebody who hasn't played enough Magic. Like I mean, people say that and they oh god, this is way too late for me to say the word hyperbole.
Hyperbole. Yeah.
Hyperbole, thank you. I mean, that like nobody really means that, I think, unless they really only played the matchup like 5 times. But yeah, I've lost to Death and Taxes. And like one of the most common ways to do it is either Swan Canonist, postboard. That's the scariest card in the world. Like either Swan Canonist, it turns off Glimpse, but it also turns off our alternate plan of just like drawing 5 cards a turn with Visionary and just like going crazy and getting everything to the board and eventually just winning with a Senate. And yeah, that's like one of the most common ways. The other one is when they have like 3 spot removal spells and a chitter and a way to connect. I mean, it happens. It's gotten a little harder. It used to be easier before they got a lot of awesome hate bears. Like Containment Priest is one of them. Containment Priest is really annoying. But overall, yeah, I've lost to it. I've lost to it plenty, and I will probably continue to lose to it every once in a while.
It is
Um,
a very
oh,
standard bearer deck. But go ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna say, I know a lot of people came for the elf talk, but I'm gonna ask I'm gonna pivot a little bit. You know, you stream a lot of different types of decks every week, but one of the ones that I have found most fascinating is the work that you've been doing with Kevin Dane and the Dane Mill. And I'm just curious. I watch whenever you have Kevin Dane on stream. I try to tune in because it's always super fascinating. Um, but I'm curious what your take is on Mill in Legacy currently, and where it sort of stands in the larger meta.
So our end goal with this would be to make it like a remotely tier 2 deck, right? Something that you wouldn't be incredibly surprised to see. I mean, that's still a long way to go. But I think the deck is much better than I first gave it credit for when Kevin came to me with it. Like, Kevin showed me the list, and I was like, I don't like this, but I haven't really played the deck yet, so I can't really tell you whether I have any idea how it works. And then I think we streamed it 3 times now, and obviously you struggle with Delver. Like, if you watch the streams, at the end of the stream, we're always like, oh, do you know what? Like, this Delver card, that's actually really good. We gotta find a way around it. And also Dreadhorde Arcanist. But the Snoko decks and the Miracle decks, they get destroyed. Especially since now that we've changed the deck from having, like, not relying on these heavy hitting mill spells for like 3, 4, 5 mana, but we got a bunch of 1 mana spells that mill. We got 8 of the crabs, and that alone is going to mill them for like, if you got turn 1 crab, turn 2 crab, and you have a fetch land, that's going to mill them for 12 on the spot. And then throw in like an archive trap or something, like half the deck is gone at this point.
And then
And
recently with the Thieves Guild Enforcer, you recently went up to the last stream. I saw a 4th one made it into the build, and
yeah, we got a 4th one, and right now we got 3 Bitter Blossoms, but I think we want to go up to 4. And for those who don't know, Thieves Guild Enforcer is a 1/1 with flash. Oh, I think it's a 2/1 with flash.
yeah.
And when the opponent has 8 cards or more in the graveyard, it becomes a 3/2 with flash and I think Death Touch. And whenever a rogue comes into play, you mill your opponent for 2. So the Thieves Guild Enforcer is a rogue.
Rogues.
Thieves Guild Enforcer, surprise, rogue, not a soldier. And so you get more of those. And then you have Bitter Blossom, which puts fairy rogue tokens into play. So let's say you have 2 Thieves Guild Enforcer, every upkeep you mill them for 4. For 4, for 4, for 4. And of course, if you have more, then even more. So that's I think the biggest strategic thing that we discovered is that we want to have a bunch of cheap mill spells, because if we have those expensive mill spells, like Mind Funeral, we are much more susceptible to stuff like Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast. So now we're just like having all these 1 mana things, and we're taking advantage of the opponent that way. And we've milled out a couple of Snowco, and I think, oh god, that one dude on Lancer, like that wasn't even like a match. That was something else.
It's been a crazy sort of ride watching you and him sort of chew through what this deck looks like in the meta. But yeah.
Another question here, and this is from Charbel. He is one of our premier alert pilots, and basically, Charbel asks, speaking of the current online meta, do you feel the perception of the state of the meta is warped by the pandemic and almost exclusively online play? And I want to put a side note on this. I have been a little bit behind on articles and putting out the meta update and stuff like that. But the online meta just doesn't match up from what we've been seeing a lot here on the Discord. We've been seeing a lot more mid range. We've seen a lot more older tempo decks. Even things like Mud are more popular here than they are online. And it's one of those things that, do you feel like that the online meta has been warped because of the pandemic?
But I think it depends on what your anchor point is, from where you view it, and then you're like, oh, this is my anchor point, and this is warped, or this is warped. I think if your anchor point is paper, then online is always going to be different. If your anchor point is like what's trending online, then you're always going to get the feeling of, oh, paper is behind. I think it's very much a thing of logistics. On Magic Online, you just have, I don't know. I could try to calculate it because like the Wizards gave me some numbers, but I'm not even allowed to share them. But the number of matches that happen and the number of tournaments happen on Magic Online and the kind of pressure you face there is just like so fundamentally different. But I think the biggest thing why you don't see a paper tournament overrun with Snowco and Rock Delver, that was probably like the two biggest offenders, is logistics. And in paper, it's not like, oh, you're just going to change your deck. Like most people, especially these days, they have like one deck and then maybe a second one. And that's usually it. I remember when I started playing, I had a place at Legacy. Oh, wish I hadn't sold that, but yeah, what can you do? And everybody just played whatever they wanted for every tournament. I remember like in 2008, 9, 10, we sat together with like our binders and we just like built whatever we wanted to play, but that's not a thing that's happening anymore. And especially during COVID, I think people just stick to what they have and they like get really good at it. And that's why we don't see everybody jumping on the Rock Diver train. And I think that's one of the main factors why we will always have some kind of disconnect between what people do online, where you can just like jump onto, Card Hoarder, whatever you need, and paper, where if you want to jump onto a new deck, you're looking like at a couple $1,000 to change your deck. And with how few games you actually get to play, like if you play your weeklies, that's already enough. But if you play on Magic Online, you play like probably like 10 times the matches if you're granted, like 20 times the matches, 30 times. Like my most degenerate weekend was, God, I don't even want to talk about it. That was in 2015. I was like on a Sunday night. I felt really bad and I didn't know what was going on. And then I looked at my match history and I had played 76 matches over the weekend, starting on like Friday night. I was like, dude, 76 matches of Legacy in like 2.5 days. No wonder you're feeling exhausted. And I think that's just
a
like
5-round event
thing.
and my brain hurts. Ow. Wow.
2015 was different. Like I looking back, I really had this thing where ever since like I won my first big tournament in 2013, I felt like, oh, dude, you can actually like make use of these skills and the luck and everything. It's like, oh yeah, let's be the big guy who plays all the tournaments. And then I did that until like 2018. And ever since then, I'm focusing a lot more on content creation. Like I had some really great years, like basically 5 years of being hyper competitive and basically hitting all the big tournaments in Europe and some of them even like in the US. But you can't really do it all, and that's why I love content creating so much. So I'm super excited to go to like paper tournaments again once they resume in Europe. We don't really know when that's gonna be happening, but my number one priority these days is content creation.
Well, so speaking of content creation, we have a question out here from one of our regulars in the Twitch chat, Malfi, who's asking about your start in streaming and how that really sort of ended up coming about for you.
So I can only speak for myself, but it helps if you try dating your dentist. It's the closest thing I can tell you. No, seriously, like some kind of like weird on-off relationship came to an end in 2013, and I was like, okay, dude, I need to do something. I don't know. I'm not gonna be sitting at home and be like, oh, this sucks. What can I do? And I always wanted to stream, and I actually tried streaming in 2010 and 2011, like on Justin TV and livestream.com and what they had. But that didn't really work out because my internet sucked and my computer was bad. And what I mean by that is I didn't understand how it worked. But then Twitch came along, and I just like started streaming. I think my first stream title must have been like in May or something of 2013. Hi, my name is Julian, and I'm gonna start streaming by just doing it. And then I just like started streaming randomly, and there weren't too many legacy streamers or like magic streamers or streamers in the first place. So yeah, I guess I'm still what they would call an early adopter or something, and that's how I really got into streaming. And it's
when you put it that
cool how many
way,
people I actually met that way.
when you put it that way, you did the tournament scene for a long time. You were big into the European scene. You have a ton of actual sanctioned DSI, DSI matches. Sorry, And it's one of those things that you put forth a lot of effort in learning the format, learning the meta, crafting your deck. And now this is what you're doing right now is you're just giving back. You're giving back to the community by teaching people, you're bringing people into legacy and stuff like that. You attribute this to like the old boxers, the old fighters and stuff like that, that once they do their time, they do their matches, they hit that certain point, they teach, they give back, they do stuff like that. And that's what you're doing right now with Legacy. You host a podcast, you host these streams, you play these wild decks that people would never have thought that could actually work, like Mill, but you're giving back in the way to the community that is in a positive way. And that's seen as that's reflected. Hell, I go to your podcast when I want to learn something. Whenever you put something out and you have some wild podcast or that you're talking about like different events or something like that, you know, it it keeps me interested and it keeps me going. When I'm walking my dog out there, I listen to your podcast because it's one of those things that I learn from it. I better myself from it. And I've only been playing. So I started playing Magic in 2000, but it was one of those things that I was always afraid to touch Legacy because it was so intimidating. But about 2015, I was like, I'm going to learn how to play Legacy, and I am determined to do that. And I sought out some of the most popular ways to like learn how to play Legacy, and I found Everyday Eternal, I found your stream, stuff like that, and you gave back to it because you taught me how to play the format. Of course, I didn't settle on elves as a deck, but it's one of those things that we see that it's happening, that you've done that.
You
You've come full
adopted the
circle. You've
Nickford
come,
ways.
yeah. That was because of Pleasant Kenobi. I saw a video Pleasant Kenobi put out,
Wait,
and I started with a
Vince
bunch.
got you into playing Nickford?
Yeah, he got me into playing
Oh
Nick
my
Fit.
god.
So it started because
Okay.
I was playing Red Black Reanimator. I played D&T. I played a couple different things, and then I saw that you play Mirren of Clan Neltoth, Green Sun Zenith, Cabal Therapy, and Tireless Tracker, and Leovold, especially Leovold, which is one of my favorite cards in existence, all in one deck. And I was like, this is the deck for me. This is what I want to play.
It's funny you make a point about like giving back to the community, because to me it doesn't really feel like that. I mean, I guess it happens incidentally, but to me it's really just like about doing what I want to be doing and what I enjoy doing. It's not like I feel like, oh, I mean, yes, I want to give back to the community, of course, but it's not like I feel like that's what I'm doing. I'm just like, I love podcasting, I love talking, I love doing like especially video editing. I want to do a lot more video editing and dedicated YouTube stuff. I recently did like a small intro to Legacy on my YouTube channel that you can find there. And
Phenomenal.
that's just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
Phenomenal.
we
That was
posted that
shared.
all over the place. It was amazing.
Yeah, we posted that everywhere. Like I shared that to friends of mine that don't even play Legacy, and I said, "This is why you need to try Legacy. This right here."
oh, thank you so much. But yeah, I like seriously, what I'm saying is, I love doing this kind of stuff, and if it helps out the community, even better, because then you get this whole interaction of people telling you, hey, I want to see this kind of content, or I appreciate this kind of content. But at this point, I also really got to say, it wouldn't be possible without the people who support everything on Patreon, and also the sponsors behind all of this. Like when I run the Legacy Premier League, I really couldn't do it without Scott Monroe and Wizards and Cardholder, who are involved with all of this. And same for the podcast. Like I have to take, like, it's still like a labor of love, but I have to do it in my free time, and I couldn't really justify all the hours that go into like all the content that I create without the people who are supporting it on Patreon. So I really, 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 really want to give a big shout out to those guys and girls and everyone. That's
Speaking of
amazing. It's
the
really amazing.
MTG Premier League, I almost failed a midterm in grad school because of your win in the finals, and I stayed up to watch it.
Oh
So
god.
you had an awesome win, and honestly, it was crazy to watch the last MTG Premier League and like the Legacy Premier League. Like watching that whole event was so much fun because you got such big names to come in and play this, and it was such a fun event. Like you need to do it again. It's such a great time.
Yeah. That's one of those things where I'm always scared to do it, and every time I finish the league, I'm telling myself I'm never gonna do that again, because the amount of work is insane that goes into that. Like a lot of work that people don't see, but that eventually feeds into it being a good production. So the deeper into the tournament I get, the more work it becomes, because I can not only like focus on production, but also kind of wanna like at least put on a good show when I play. And that last season, I think I played until like 6 in the morning against Javier Dominguez, and he also like he lives in Spain, so he also played until 6 in the morning. So that was something. I had to win the first series because I came from the loser bracket, and then I had to win the second series, and I think I won it like 3-2.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
that was
was
insane.
I should have been really studying. I was taking, if I remember correctly, it was an oncology class. We had we had an exam, and I was just like, I should be studying, but this is just way too interesting. It was so well, and when you flip the bracket, I was like, okay, well, I'm not studying anymore. But
Yeah, I
so,
want to do another one. We have some tournaments coming up in 2021 that I can't tell you about yet, but they're going to be really cool. And speaking of like teaching Legacy and giving back to the community, we're also going to have a pretty exciting website coming up that does something that nobody else in Legacy, at least, or Magic, I think, even is doing right now. So that's going to be
look
like a
forward
month
to
or
it.
two before we release that, but that's going to be pretty cool. So stay tuned.
So, continue on. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just gonna say we have another question, and it's sort of a tag teamed question here. Malfi had asked us previously, and I saw in the Twitch chat that Rax had asked a very similar question. So there has been, especially I think after this last Eternal Weekend, a lot of talk about specific bans in Legacy, which um, we haven't seen any since the companions, thankfully. Um, what? Sorry, I'm trying to combine these two questions into one thing. So Malfi is asking, so what are your thoughts on the current state of bomb cards in Legacy and on the ban discussions of Simic issue cards, and then Rax is asking about how close you feel Legacy is to being solved, which is, I guess, in my mind, a very similar question.
So uh, obviously that's like one of the biggest discussion of the last 12 plus months, and a lot of people have their own takes on that. And I think especially with regards to the current state of Legacy, it's one of the best examples of where I feel like just looking at power level alone isn't gonna get you to like understanding why a lot of people are unhappy about the current state of the format, me included. Like this is not a format right now where I feel like, oh, this is bad. They immediately must do something, because when it feels like that, they've always banned something. Like I've never been in a position in Legacy where I felt like, oh, something is really wrong, but then Wizards didn't act on it. So Wizards always ended up acting on it, and I think they might also do it here. But here it doesn't feel like, oh, something is incredibly overpowered. It just feels like, and the best way I can put it is that advantages are less granular now. You know, you get your scale from 1 to 10, and like you both start out at 5, and then you get like a +1, +1, -1, -1. But now it's more like +3, +3. You like your advantage is snowballing, I guess would be a good word. Your advantages snowball a lot harder than they used to do previously, where if you fell behind a little bit, you could come back more easily. And I think right now, especially, I think the biggest offender with regards to that is Strato Darkenist. That makes it so that it's worth it to spend a lot of effort on a protected queen strategy with, for example, Strato Darkenist. That's basically the big thing. And speaking of Javier Dominguez, by the way, he wrote an article that we linked in our most recent podcast as well. He actually wrote it way earlier this year, where he talked about that exact phenomenon that's previously you often wanted to side out, for example, Force of Will. That's like a good practical example in a lot of like blue mirrors. But now that we have all these bombs that give you like these big short-term advantages that not only like they don't fade away, they snowball. And that's why you want to keep in Force of Wills a lot of times. And that's how like the actual gameplay changed. And while, for example, Rock Diver is probably an offender with regards to power level, Snowcore not so much. Snowcore is really like just pain in the ass, honestly. I don't know.
It's
I
just
think
it's
it's the
just
most boring deck in
everything
history.
just thrown in together. Yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
hodgepodge.
So I think if I was to change something in Legacy, I couldn't bring it down to like, oh, I want this card banned and I want this card unbanned, and then it's fine. I think when I say, for example, Allosaurus Shepherd is stupid, my version of Legacy that I really enjoy playing would probably see a lot of cards gone. Not even necessarily because of power level, because right now we're like on even footing with a lot of decks. And then maybe Rock Diver slightly ahead, but not so much that he would ban something. I would change the general gameplay style. And I think bans, for example, like Gitaxian Probe in the past. That's a good one. That one wasn't necessarily banned on power level. Like, yeah, it was really good in Grixis Delver, but that's a card that takes away a very important gameplay aspect, and I think that's one of those gameplay reasons why you would ban a certain card. And if you ask me, I would okay, I would remove Dread Arcanist, I would remove Shepherd, I would remove Astrolabe. Then I could very much be convinced that I'd want to remove Veil of Summer. And then I would also probably want to remove Oko, but Oko I feel less strongly about. And then Uro, I probably would keep around just because, like with Astrolabe Gun, I think Uro would, like the power level of Uro would drop immensely with Astrolabe Gun. But yeah, that's where I am, like in the short term. And then if you want my dictatorial views, like the really crazy Julian scenarios, I also want Griselbrand Gun because there's no bigger before and after moment in the history of Legacy than 2012 with
I
Everson
will
Restored.
agree.
And Griselbrand is the last remaining offender from that thing. I guess Delver, in a way, Delver came out in Innistrad, but like the whole Innistrad block. It's not like before it was the glory, the promised land, and afterwards it's the horrible land, but the gameplay changed significantly. And I think a big part of that is Griselbrand and Delver. And yeah, so if you want to hear my crazy views, I would love to explore the format without Delver, but it's not something like I love playing Delver. Don't
I
get me wrong. I think it's one of the coolest decks you can play in a tournament.
I'm in agreement with a lot of that as well. I think Veil is very oppressive, honestly. Veil and Astrolabe, I think, are the most important because of the fact that Astrolabe removes one of the pillars of the format, being Wasteland. I think Wasteland should always be a viable way of mediating the format. Yes, you're going to get your things wastelanded. That's what we accept here in Legacy. Getting to 3 mana should be something you have to strive for rather than, just automatically have by playing basics, and your mana fixing comes from an artifact. And Veil of Summer eliminates the other pillar of the format, and that is discard, or being Hymn to Torok, Thoughtseize, Cabal Therapy, as well as it really does cut out like storm decks, other effective decks that really lean hard on that black targeting you effects. And that's the reason why we don't see Ant. Ant is my combo deck of choice to play. Hey, but it just doesn't have a matchup because it can't pivot like Test does to Grape Shot. And it's one of those things that I really think Veil does need to go as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I played it and I loved it in my Nick Fit deck because I was like, oh, I have a counter spell, but like not a counter spell. But it's gotten to the point that it's just when Sneak and Show doesn't exist because of the fact that you just run blue green Omnitel for the protection. Like, what?
So
Why play it?
so speaking of one of the sort of what's universally cross format has been considered one of the largest problem cards in Arkham's Astrolabe, which you just brought up. We actually have a question from tonight's winner, Basvana Houston, which I'm going to pronounce that wrong every time.
Actually, I think you're the only one of us to pronounce that correct.
You're probably the only one who makes an attempt at pronouncing that.
So Bass brings up Call Time coming out. Not too far away from where we are now, and the likelihood of seeing some anti-snow cards. And he asked, what card, if any, would you like to see printed that can answer Legacy Snow and specifically Arkham's Astrolabe? So, instead of banning, I think this is a good part of this conversation that we're having right now. What can be introduced into the format as opposed to taken out of the format?
I think that the biggest problem with stuff like that is that you quickly end up in a scenario where you gamble a lot. Like, do I play the snow deck or do I not play the snow deck? And you just like you hope you don't face the person who might have some heavy anti-snow deck. Like, I don't know, back to basics for snowlands or something that's really powerful. Because if you don't make the snow hate strong and widely applicable, then you wouldn't see it in the first place. So you gotta get beyond a certain threshold where you can really hate those decks really hard. And I don't like that kind of metagame that would produce and the kind of incentives that you would get from that. So if you
So
like, imagine
similarly, I was just gonna say similarly to the issue that Plague Engineer has presented.
Yeah, Plague Engineer is pretty blunt in what it does, and yeah, that's basically that's actually very similar. And I don't like that kind of thing. And if you, for example, if you introduce something like, I don't know, a creature that when it comes into play destroys a snow permanent or something, you'd still need to make that creature viable in the first place in the main deck, because in the sideboard it would already be like so and so, like
We
meh.
don't need it like an Avalanche Riders effect. We need a 1 mana destroy target snow permanent or snow back to basics or something like that.
Yeah, I think it would need to be something like permanent that gives you, but also that gives you like a lasting advantage. Like even if it's something like a back to basics that's for snow, then eventually it's gonna get decayed, and you really only got a tempo advantage out of it. And a lot of times decks that use these kinds of cards can't really make too much use of it. And I mean, we already have Winter Orb, which kind of does that, and it's also not great against those decks. It's actually quite flavorful if you try to use Winter Orb, I guess, against the snow deck. So I don't think that printing hate specifically for anything snow is really gonna get us to a more desirable format. That's probably like my answer.
I
Uh,
I agree with you that I think that snow hate in concept is a great idea because everything in Magic needs to have a balance. If you're gonna play this, you need to have a downside to it. Only in modern card design have we seen non-circumferential base effects, i.e., Plague Engineer versus Engineered Plague. It's one of those things that in modern card design the snow has to have a withdrawal. It has to have something that's difficult, like something that does against it. Otherwise, we just need to get rid of Astrolabe. And also, I'm just tired of seeing snowlands. I hate them. I hate them. I have fancy basics. I want to play with fancy basics.
hey, I know
To
snow.
like get a little deeper into that for 1 second, I think the biggest problem with fighting snow, and I think when we talk about snow, we specifically talk about fighting the snow lands, because fighting over Astrolabe is just like the most losing battle. Like it's a worse losing battle than trying to find over Sense Divining Top. And that is like all of a sudden we're competing for another resource. Like we have mana, like lands, we have cards in hand, but now we also have like this other mana thing that we could be competing over or fighting over. And I think that's like a really weird way to play the game, that we have like two ways to fight over the lands. Like we basically have lands, non-basic lands, and then we have like this next level, not even like a next level, that a different angle of attack and a different kind of resource that we would be fighting over. Like basically, if you made it so that all the snow basics are non-basic, that would make them unplayable. So that would actually defeat the entire purpose of Astrolabe, I guess. So I really don't see a good way to introduce a mechanic that's widely playable that also attacks this new kind of resource, I guess, snow. And that's really hard to make those cards playable like in a general metagame, because like 60 to 70% of times you're still not gonna play against snow. So
I agree. Though on that same subject, do you have any basics that you prefer? Any basic art types? Yes. Yes, you and me. You and me, those are my Nick Fit basics. I have 2 swamps, 2 islands, and forests. Yes.
yeah.
I am
I mean, if they're foil, I also like. I really like the unhinged ones if they're foil, because those look amazing in foil. But if they're non-foil, I'm definitely gonna go for unglued.
thank you. Oh, Julian, you have just you have made it so that when people say, "Oh, why don't you play this big?" Well, Julian also plays unglued, so but we do have another our last kind of combo question here. Last 2 questions are from Blackside Dog. And we already talked about, how your scene is going on, especially with the lockdown and stuff like that. But uh, Black Guy has a little bit of a longer question here. And says he asks, by allowing printed proxies and not having material prizes, our community has drastically reduced the barrier to entry while protecting a play what you love mentality. Many players, including myself, have gotten in numerous reps with the deck with the new decks without having to invest in moto accounts without access to all the cards. However, while I would expect this lower barrier of entry to encourage non-legacy players to dip their feet in the format, I have not yet I have not yet met many doing this. Growth and community support will be key for the survival and the progression of Legacy. So, in the digital first age, do you think that the Legacy community should actively try to interest more modern, standard, and pioneer players? If so, how do you go about doing that?
I think that's like one of my very, very core beliefs as a content creator, I guess, is that you attract more people by just creating an atmosphere of, whoa, I want to be part of that. See what they're doing, I want to be doing that. And I think that's how you do it, by producing tournaments in a way that's exciting, by I want to say, what do you call that? It's 3 a.m. By putting out a lot of positivity about what you feel passionate, like basically by showing your passion, not necessarily talking too much about, oh, this is bad and I don't like this and I don't like this. Like when people ask you about what you don't like, you can talk about that, and I mean that also creates a way of sharing your the stuff that you really like, that pisses you off, Astrolabe. Okay, but overall, I think the at least for me, and I think for most other people, it's the kind of content they want to watch is like positive content and content that makes you passionate about stuff. Like I remember when I first got into, for example, like watching Brood War and stuff like that. I mean, if you watch Brood War, you probably know who I'm talking about, because there's a couple of really amazing commentators, and those really draw you in, and they give you the feeling of, dude, I would watch them commentate, I don't know, a spaghetti eating contest or whatever. I really don't know. Like the most random thing ever, just because they make it exciting. And I think that's how you get people into the kind of content that you're doing. And I think, especially with regards to Eternal, I think we have a lot of awesome content creators out there who really project that kind of passion and positivity and excitement for the format that we are playing. And I think that's the number one way to get more people excited in the format, because nobody watches Legacy and immediately understands like how deep a lot of the decisions are. But they get a feeling of, wow, this is incredibly powerful, and yet people still use Mother of Thrones. Like I said in the video, right? You could be casting Griselbrand, but you cast Mother of Thrones, and you don't fully understand why that is while you get into Legacy, into like first month, whatever, how long you play, but you understand that that's possible. And you could be the guy who wants to play the 7/7 demon, or you want to be the one who casted 1/1 Mother of Thrones, or something entirely different. But you understand that that's possible, and that the community is awesome and passionate. And every time you encounter a really passionate community, you know that there's probably something to be found in this game that you might want to be part of. Whereas if somebody is more like, yeah, cast my spell, okay, cool, whatever. Like, get me out of there. I want to watch something
and
else.
That's what separates Legacy from any other community, I think, when it comes to Magic, is the passion. Legacy players just want to play with their cards, and when we were talking about this on Blacksite's question, my local game shop, we host a Saturday night proxy Legacy tournament. You can come in with any proxy deck or just borrow one. We actually built proxy decks for the shop to take, and just say, yeah, if you don't have a Legacy deck, here, borrow this. What do you like to play? Do you like to play mid-range? Do you like to play aggro? Do you want to play combo? Here's how you do this. And we give them sideboarding tips. In fact, there's a little card in there that has sideboarding tips against control. Sideboard these cards in, sideboard these cards out. And it gives people who have never played Legacy or who believe that, oh, it's a turn one format. No, it gives them this look into a world that they've never experienced, and it's addicting. And that's just how we get people. And I really think that, like you said, putting out that positivity of what is Legacy for people, and it's just playing with their old cards that they love to play with and just having fun.
Yeah, very, very much that. I couldn't have said it better, really. That's some of the most fundamental things that I believe in when it comes to doing anything online that has an audience. And yeah, that's what I want to be doing, really. That's what I strive to do. I don't know, sometimes fail, I guess. When I play against Astrolabe, I'm pissed. But I try not to show it on the stream or something. But yeah, I think that's
I know I can
one
say
of the
for
biggest
myself
resources of Legacy.
that, every time I jump into your stream, it makes me want to go and play Legacy. So
So, Julian, thank you so much for your time and your effort and hanging out with us. I know it's 3 a.m. in the morning there, so we're going to let you off. But thank you so much for coming out here and being a part of the MTG Paper Legacy Discord.
It was great having you. Do you want to plug anything before we let you go?
Yeah, if you want to come to Kenya, hit me up. We're doing safaris in Kenya. We're gonna send you anywhere you want to climb, like Mount Kenya. You want to go to Kilimanjaro, which is in Tanzania. You want to go hang out on the beach. I'm your man for anything Kenya, seriously. And other than that, yeah, check out my Twitter, twitter.com/ItsJulian23. Check out my Twitch, twitch.tv/ItsJulian. Check out ItsJulian.com. And yeah, I think that's. Oh yeah, if you want to support what I'm doing, like I guess you didn't really see what I'm doing here tonight. There's patreon.com/ItsJulian23. And that's pretty much it. thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm so excited to watch your future stuff. Are you only ever doing the finals, or are you like streaming the
So
entire thing
we
usually?
actually, so we do the Tuesday night Legacy Fight Night, which is 3 rounds streamed, all 3 rounds. Then we have our finals, which are streamed every Saturday. Then we have, usually we'll have the Legacy Finals, which is at the end of the league finals, which is at the end of the month, which is all 3 to 4 rounds streamed. And then every single season we'll have a big 8 round 6 to 7 round tournament, depending on if the bracket gets flipped and stuff like that. But we're usually streaming every Tuesday and Saturday at least. So
And you have
definitely,
pre-Innistrad Legacy coming up. That's exciting.
yeah, we have
Next week.
pre-Innistrad coming next week. That's going to be our theme for our Tuesday night fight night. So if you want to be in on it, if you want to be in on it, Julian, Maverick was really good in pre-Innistrad, and we would
I
love to
was gonna
have you.
say it was one of the top 3 decks. That's actually when I fell in love with it and got my first GP top 2. Top 2, I wish, day 2.
But
not yet, not yet.
come on out, join in the fun. But yeah, so if you want to, if anybody wants to join the chat, !Discord is the the command to get the to come out. And you know what? We're just here to promote Eternal Magic. And thank you everybody for showing out. And let us be
Thank
your
you so
legacy.
much, Julian, for coming out and joining us tonight, commentating with Doc. And thanks to everybody out there in the world of
Legacy
Twitch.
community.